The bridge of the Zapirian dreadnought, Eclipse of Dominion, hummed with the quiet arrogance of absolute power. High Admiral Vorkis lounged in his command throne, 4 yellow eyes scanning the holographic displays with lazy disdain. His scaled fingers, each tipped with retractable claws, drummed against the armrest. The Eclipse was the pride of the 7th Imperial Fleet, a 5-kilometer monstrosity of black alloy and plasma cannons. Around him, lesser officers scurried, their exoskeletons clicking in nervous deference. "Report!" Vorkis hissed, his voice like grinding stone. Tactical Officer Zapirian flinched. The younger Zapirian's frills flushed pale blue, a telltale sign of anxiety. Sensors detect a single vessel drifting near the forward picket line, Admiral. Human design!" A ripple of amusement spread through the bridge. Vorkis leaned forward, his crest rising in mock curiosity. "Show me!" The main display flickered to life, revealing a grainy, long-range image. A lone battleship hung against the starfield, its angular hull scarred from countless battles. The identification tag flashed. UESN Defiance. Zapirian cleared his throat. "It appears damaged." "Life support is minimal. Weapons offline. Drift pattern suggests uncontrolled propulsion failure." Vorkis laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Humans, always overreaching." He waved a clawed hand. "Magnify." The image zoomed. The Defiance was a relic compared to Zapirian warships. Its armor plating was patched in places, its railgun turrets frozen in awkward angles. A jagged breach along its starboard flank exposed twisted superstructure. "Look at it," Vorkis sneered, like a wounded animal limping into a predator's den. Zapirian's frills twitched. "Shall we destroy it, Admiral?" Vorkis exhaled through his nasal slits. "Why waste antimatter warheads on garbage? Send the sting of contempt to scare it off." A single warning shot across its bow. A chorus of chuckles echoed through the bridge. On screen, the Defiance continued its slow, helpless drift. The Eclipse of Dominion's bridge, obsidian floors, glowing control panels, alien officers with chitinous armor, Vorkis, towering, scaled, with 4 slit-pupiled eyes and a crest of bony plates. The Defiance, battered, asymmetrical, with visible battle damage, a wounded beast in space. Zapirians mock the Defiance as a broken relic. Vorkis dismisses it with a single frigate. The human ship drifts silently, seemingly helpless. The War Council chamber of the Eclipse of Dominion hummed with the low, pulsing glow of holographic star maps. High Admiral Vorkis lounged in his command throne, his 4 eyes half-lidded with amusement as he watched the lone human battleship drift on the view screen. The UESN Defiance was a pitiful sight, its armor scorched, its engines dark, like a wounded animal limping through the void. "By the Blood Emperor's claws," Vorkis rumbled, his voice dripping with contempt. "They send this to challenge us?" Tactical Officer Zapirian adjusted the display, his clawed fingers flicking through sensor data. "Shields at minimal power, weapons offline. Scans indicate heavy damage from previous engagements. It's barely functional." Vorkis barked a laugh, the sound like grinding metal. "A single crippled ship? Humans truly are as feeble as the reports claimed." He waved a dismissive hand. "Have the sting of vengeance fire a warning shot across its bow. Let them crawl back to their hole." A new voice cut through the chamber, dry, ancient, and laced with something none of the Zapirians recognized. "Fear! You are making a mistake!" All eyes turned to Elder Historian Kexal, the sole representative of the Caldari precursors. His withered form hovered near the holotank, his 6-fingered hands trembling if they traced the image of the human ship. His species had once ruled the stars, long before the Zapirians clawed their way to power. Now they were relics, advisors kept around for their knowledge of forgotten eras. Vorkis sneered. "Speak plainly, Elder. We have no patience for riddles." Kexal's milky eyes locked onto the Admiral. "That ship is not what it seems. Humans are not what they seem." With a flick of his wrist, he summoned new holograms, scenes of ancient wars, of fire and ruin. You mock them for their fragility, yet they are the only species to survive the Great Filter. Zyron leaned closer, his crest of spines twitching. The filter was a myth, a story to frighten hatchlings. Quetzal's laugh was a brittle, broken thing. No, it was real, a wave of extinction that swept the galaxy 10,000 cycles ago. Entire empires fell in days. The Keldari barely escaped. His claw tapped the image of the Defiance, and they endured. The hologram shifted, grainy footage of human history. World War II, the Mars Rebellion, the siege of Proxima Centauri. Scenes of humans fighting, always fighting, no matter the cost. Vorkus scoffed. Primitive conflicts, they lack discipline, lack strength. Max strength. Quetzal's voice dropped to a whisper. You do not understand. They do not fight like us. They do not think like us. He pointed to the Defiance. That ship is and it is not running. Silence settled over the chamber. Then Vorkus snarled, slamming a fist onto the armrest. Enough! I will not be lectured by a relic about humans. He turned to Zyren. Order the fleet to target that wreck. Reduce it to atoms. Quetzal's shoulders slumped. Then you have doomed us all. As alarms blared and the eclipse of Dominion's weapons powered up, the Elder watched the Defiance on the screen. Its battered hull, its silent guns, and the faint flickering signal deep within its core. A silent signal deep within its core. A signature no Zapirian scanner could detect. The same energy that had once burned the galaxy. The humans had tamed it, and now they were smiling. The bridge of the UESN Defiance was dark. Not the comforting dark of a ship at rest, but the predatory dark of something waiting to strike. Emergency lights cast long shadows across scorched control panels. The air smelled of ozone and burnt coffee. Captain Ryan Blake leaned forward in his command chair, the leather creaking under his weight. His scarred hands rested on the armrests, fingers tapping in uneven rests, fingers tapping in uneven rhythm. On the main view screen, the Zapirian fleet glittered like jewels against the black. Dozens of warships, their sleek hulls reflecting the distant starlight. Status? Blake's voice was rough, like gravel in a steel drum. Engineer Lisa Hayes didn't look up from her console. Her fingers danced across the controls, pulling data streams only she could decipher. Reactors at 12%, she said, smirking, just like we planned. Gunnery Chief Jake Morrison popped a bubble of gum. He lounged in his seat, one boot propped up on the targeting console. They're scanning us again, he said, nodding at the flickering sensor display. Third time in 5 minutes. Think they're nervous? Blake's lips twitched. Doubt it. The Defiance was a wreck on the outside. Her hull was pockmarked with scars from a dozen battles, her armor plating warped and blackened. To the Zapirians, she must have looked like a dying beast, limping through the void. Hayes tapped a command sequence, limping through the void. Hayes tapped a command sequence. Somewhere deep in the ship's belly, systems whirred to life. Shield emitters primed, she murmured. Weapons hot but holding. Morrison cracked his knuckles. How long are we gonna let 'em poke us? Blake didn't answer. His eye stayed locked on the view screen, where the Zapirian frigate Dagger of Submission was moving closer. Its plasma cannons glowed faintly, charging for a warning shot. The crew didn't flinch. Hayes adjusted her headset, humming tunelessly. Morrison blew another bubble. Blake just watched. Audio only. Blake nodded. Put it through. The voice that crackled over the speakers was slick with arrogance. Human vessel, this is the Zapirian Imperial fleet. You are in restricted space. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Morrison rolled his eyes. Original. Blake keyed the reply. This is Captain Ryan Blake of the UESN Defiance. We're just passing through. He paused. Mind if we rest here a bit? Ship's seen better days. Ship's seen better days. Silence, then laughter, sharp and mocking, pathetic. You have 1 minute to comply. The channel cut off. Hayes snorted. Charming! Blake leaned back. They took the bait. The bridge lights flickered as the Defiance's power core cycled up. Hidden conduits hummed beneath the deck plates. Panels that had looked broken slid open, revealing fresh weapon ports. The ship wasn't drifting, Morrison stretched. So, we doing this the fun way, or the really fun way? Blake's grin was all teeth. Let's remind them why Earth never surrendered. Let's remind them why Earth never surrendered. And the humans couldn't wait to show them. The Eclipse of Dominion's weapons array hummed to life, its plasma cannons glowing like angry suns. High Admiral Vorkus leaned forward in his command throne, his 4 eyes narrowed in amusement. On the view screen, the UESN Defiance drifted like a wounded animal, its hull scarred, its engines dark. And they call this a battleship? Tactical Officer Zylren adjusted his console, his antennae twitching nervously. Shall we deploy the Shadow Blade to intercept? A warning shot should. Vorkus cut him off with a hiss. No, we will handle this. Let the humans see what real firepower looks like. He raised a clawed hand. All batteries target their engines. Leave them drifting as a lesson. Across the Zapirian fleet, weapons locked on. The Defiance's bridge was dim, lit only by the glow of tactical displays. They're painting us, Gunnery Chief Jake Morrison reported, chewing his gum lazily. Plasma signatures across the board. Looks like the big guy's playing for keeps. Engineer Lisa Hayes smirked, her fingers dancing over her console. Shields at 30%. Reactors idling like you asked, Cap. Blake nodded. Let them think they've got us. Outside, space itself seemed to hold its breath. The Eclipse of Dominion fired. A torrent of plasma bolts streaked across the void, each one capable of vaporizing a lesser ship. The Defiance's battered hull was bathed in searing light, impact after impact rocking the ship. Vorkus grinned, waiting for the explosion. The Defiance shuddered, but held. Its shields flickered, a shimmering blue barrier flaring under the assault. The ship drifted unharmed. Zylren's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Their shields! They shouldn't have shields that strong! Vorkus snarled, slamming a fist down. Again! Fire again! The Defiance rocked under the second barrage. Alarms wailed, but the crew stayed calm. Hayes watched her readouts, eyebrows rising, shields down to 15%. They're really throwing the kitchen sink at us, Morrison chuckled. Guess they don't like it when the prey bites back. Blake's eyes never left the view screen. The Zapirian fleet loomed like a wall of death, their weapons glowing for another volley. Cap, Hayes said slowly. They're charging their main spinal cannon. Blake's lips curled. About time. The Eclipse of Dominion's primary weapon, a planet cracker capable of splitting continents, powered up. Energy coiled around its barrel, a storm of annihilation waiting to be unleashed. Quote, Vorkus bared his fangs. This ends now! A beam of pure destruction lanced across space, slamming into the Defiance with the force of a dying star. The human ship vanished in a blinding flash. For a moment, silence. The Defiance was still there. Its shields flickered, weakened, but its hull remained intact. Vorkus' blood ran cold. What in the abyss? Aboard the Defiance, Blake finally stood. Enough playing dead, he said. Hayes, bring us online. Weapons hot! The Defiance's engines roared to life, their glow cutting through the darkness like a blade. Hidden panels slid open across its hull, revealing rows of blackened, angular cannons. Morrison cracked his knuckles. Time to show these lizards what real firepower looks like! Blake opened a channel to the Eclipse of Dominion. His voice was calm, cold. You should have run when you had the chance. The Defiance wasn't drifting anymore. The UESN Defiance shuddered as another volley of plasma fire slammed into its shuddered. There's another volley of plasma fire slammed into its shields. The bridge lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across Captain Ryan Blake's scarred face. He didn't flinch. On the view screen, the Zapirian fleet filled the void, dozens of warships, their predatory hulls gleaming under the light of a dying star. High Admiral Vorkus' flagship, the Eclipse of Dominion, loomed largest of all, its spinal-mounted annihilation cannon charging for another shot. "Shields at 47%, reported Tactical Officer Chen, her voice calm. "They're really throwing a kitchen sink at us." Blake smirked. "It took them long enough." In the engineering pit below, Lieutenant Lisa Hayes wiped grease from her forehead, her fingers dancing across a console that shouldn't have been glowing. The Defiance's power readings spiked erratically, not from damage but from something far worse. "Cap!" Hayes called up, her grin sharp enough to cut Durasteel. "Reactor's hot. They've seen just enough." On the Eclipse of Dominion, Tactical Officer Zyren's 4 eyes widened as his scanner screamed, "Admiral! The human ship, its energy signature." Vorkis snarled, his scaled fists clenching. "Spit it out!" The ship groaned like a waking beast. Deep in its armored belly, the Black Star reactor, a block of forbidden tech the size of a small frigate, pulsed to life. Hayes slammed her palm onto the override. "All right, you beautiful war crime, light up." The reactor's containment field disengaged. For a single, terrifying second, nothing happened. Then the Defiance's spine cracked open, armor plating sheared away like dead skin, revealing a weapon the Zapirians had only seen in ancient archives, a spiraling black energy cannon, its maw distorting space itself. The ship's running lights died, the hum of engines silenced, only the weapon glowed, hungry and patient. "Gunnery Chief," Jake Morrison whistled, popping his gum. "Well, that's one way to make an impression." Blake leaned forward in his chair, the reflection of the swirling void cannon dancing in his eyes. "Open fleet-wide channel." The bridge crew recoiled as their screens flooded with warnings. Vorkis's crest flattened against his skull, a Zapirian sign of primal terror. "Impossible," he whispered. The holographic display showed the Defiance, or what was left of its disguise. The derelict human ship had shed its skin like a serpent, revealing a nightmare beneath. Zilrin's voice cracked. That's a Black Star Annihilator." "The precursors banned that tech after the Great Filter." Vorkis whirled on Elder Historian Kexal, who stood trembling in the corner. "You said the humans survived the filter, not that they, Kexal's." Ancient eyes burned with realization. "No, you misunderstand." The Elder's voice dropped to a horrified whisper. "They weren't the victims." On screen, Captain Blake's face appeared, his transmission cutting through the chaos. "You banned this technology," he said, each word a hammer blow. "We perfected it." Hayes' fingers flew across her console, firing sequence locked. "One shot, Cap. Make it count." Morrison cracked his knuckles. "Dumbass aliens brought a fleet to a black hole fight." The Defiance's cannon pulsed. Space warped around it, light bending like taffy. The Zapirian ship's targeting systems went wild, gravity sensors screaming as the very fabric of reality twisted. Vorkis' scream was pure, undiluted panic. "Shields to Maxim!" A spiral of absolute blackness tore through the void. Not energy, not plasma, the absence of everything, a miniature singularity hungry for flesh and steel alike. The lead Zapirian frigate imploded, its hull crumpling like paper in a fist. Then the cruiser beside it, then 3 more. On the Eclipse of Dominion, alarms howled as the artificial gravity failed. Zilrin clung to his console, watching in horror as the black hole's event horizon swallowed an entire battle group in seconds. "Admiral!" he shrieked. "Their weapon! It's not just a gun! It's—" HFY finished for him, voice hollow with dread, the reason the precursors vanished. The bridge crew watched the destruction unfold, utterly calm. That got their attention. Blake studied the view screen, the mangled remains of the Zapirian flank drifting in the cannon's wake. His lips curled, Morrison grinned, slamming the charging sequence. Let's see him try to underestimate that." The Defiance's reactor hummed louder. Somewhere in the dark, the rest of the Zapirian fleet finally realized their mistake. The deck vibrated beneath his boots as the ship's Black Star reactor pulsed like a sleeping beast finally awakened. On the view screen, the Eclipse of Dominion loomed, its massive plasma cannons still glowing from their failed barrage. The Zapirian fleet had thrown everything at them. Particle lances, antimatter warheads, gravitic torpedoes, and the Defiance was still here. Blake tapped a button on his command chair. The ship's comms crackled to life, broadcasting on every Imperial frequency. His voice, rough and deliberate, cut through the silence of space like a knife. A pause. Then the screen flickered. The scaled, four-eyed face of the Zapirian commander appeared, his slit pupils dilated in shock. Behind him, Engineer Lisa Hayes smirked as her fingers danced across the reactor controls. The Defiance's spine split open, revealing the obsidian black barrel of the Black Star cannon. It pulsed with dark energy, warping the very light around it. Vorkas's voice came through, tinged with disbelief. A shudder ran through the Defiance as the Black Star cannon charged. The deck plates groaned, the lights dimmed, the air itself seemed to vibrate with contained annihilation. Gunnery Chief Jake Morrison cracked his knuckles, chewing his gum lazily. "Cap, they're looking at us like we just grew a second head." Blake ignored him. His voice dropped lower, deadlier. The view screen zoomed in on the eclipse of Dominion, on the rows of Zapirian warriors staring in horror at the human ship that refused to die. Vorkas's four eyes widened. His scaled hands gripped the armrests of his throne. "What are you?" Morrison chuckled, flipping the safety off the main battery. "The guys who win." The Black Star cannon flared to life. Space itself screamed. The Defiance's bridge, bathed in crimson emergency lighting, crew at battle stations, Captain Blake's scarred face half-shadowed, his eyes locked on the view screen, the Black Star cannon emerging from the ship's spine, warping light around it. The Zapirian fleet frozen in terror, their weapons still glowing from failed attacks. Morrison leaning back in his chair, grinning like, "This is just another Tuesday." The cannon fires. The galaxy holds its breath. The UESN Defiance hung in the void like a sleeping predator. Its scorched hull still bore the marks of Zapirian plasma fire, but the ship didn't burn, didn't break. On the bridge, Captain Ryan Blake watched the enemy fleet scramble. The Zapirian dreadnought Eclipse of Dominion loomed ahead, its massive spinal cannons glowing as they charged for another volley. "Hayes," he said, voice calm. "Light 'em up." Engineer Lisa Hayes grinned, fingers dancing across her console. "Reactor at 120%, Black Star cannon primed." A deep, shuddering thrum pulsed through the Defiance. The ship's spine split open, armored plates sliding aside to reveal a yawning maw of swirling darkness. The weapon hummed, distorting space around it like a black sun. Plasma lances, antimatter warheads, gravity shear projectiles. A storm of destruction slammed into the Defiance and splashed harmlessly against its flickering shields. Blake watched the fireworks through the view screen. "Morrison, you got a shot?" Gunnery Chief Jake Morrison leaned forward, chewing gum. "Locked and loaded, Cap, then send him a reply." Morrison slammed his fist down on the firing control. The Defiance's Black Star cannon screamed. A beam of pure annihilation lanced across the void. Not light, not plasma, nothingness itself, unraveling reality in its wake. The first Zapirian frigate didn't explode. It imploded, crumpling like paper in a fist before vanishing into the hungry dark. The beam tore onward, punching through 3 more ships before slamming into the Eclipse of Dominion's flank. Vorkas screamed as his dreadnought buckled. The beam didn't pierce the hull, it ate it, carving a perfect sphere of nothingness through decks, bulkheads, and screaming crew. Alarms wailed, atmosphere vented into the void. Zilren staggered, clutching a bleeding gash on his forehead. Zilren staggered, clutching a bleeding gash on his forehead. Hull integrity at. Vorkas wasn't listening. His eyes were locked on the view screen. The Defiance hadn't moved, hadn't even flinched, and its cannon was recharging. "Impossible," Vorkas whispered. "On the human ship," Hayes whooped. "Direct hit! Their dreadnoughts bleeding air like a stuck pig." Blake didn't smile. Again. The Black Star cannon pulsed. This time, the Eclipse of Dominion's shields flared and shattered like glass. The beam sheared through the command spire, vaporizing half the bridge crew in an instant. Vorkas was thrown to the deck, his ornate armor scraping against twisted metal. He coughed blood, staring at the ruin of his ship. Zilren dragged him up. "We have to retreat," The fleet! Vorkis looked at the tactical display. The Defiance's single shot had torn a hole in his armada. 12 ships, gone, just gone, and the humans weren't done. Across the battlefield, the Defiance's hidden weapon ports slid open. Missile pods, railgun batteries, point defense lasers that weren't supposed to be that powerful. Blake's voice crackled over the comms, calm as death. "You wanted a fight, Vorkis. You got one." The Defiance surged forward, not fleeing. Chasing, Morrison whooped as the railguns fired. "Fish in a barrel!" Zapirian fighters evaporated in hails of tungsten slugs. A cruiser tried to turn, to run. The Defiance's missiles curved after it, detonating against its engines in a bloom of fire. Vorkis watched his fleet die. "Admiral!" Zilrun screamed. "We have to!" Vorkis grabbed him. "Send a message to the Empire!" "Now!" His voice was raw with terror. "Tell them the humans weren't hiding." On the Defiance, Hayes watched the Zapirian fleet break. Ships spun wildly, colliding in their panic to escape. She laughed. "Look at 'em run!" Blake didn't celebrate. He leaned forward, eyes locked on the crippled eclipse of Dominion. "Morrison, one more shot!" The gunnery chief cracked his knuckles. "With pleasure!" The Black Star cannon hummed. "The stage is set for humanity's galactic message. We were never weak." The wreckage of the 7th Imperial Fleet drifted in cold silence, a graveyard of shattered hulls and dying reactor cores. The UESN Defiance floated untouched at its center, her blackened armor still glowing from the Black Star cannon's discharge. Captain Ryan Blake leaned back in his command chair, the dim emergency lights casting shadows across the scars on his face. On the view screen, the Zapirian dreadnought Eclipse of Dominion listed to starboard, its spine broken, its once proud hull venting atmosphere in frozen geysers. Tactical Officer Zylren's panicked voice crackled over the comms. "How? Your species wasn't even spacefaring 3 centuries ago." Blake didn't smile. He didn't need to. Engineer Lisa Hayes flicked a switch on her console, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Reactor stable, Cap. Coolant levels at 82%. We can fire again in, let's say 90 seconds if they're feeling suicidal." Gunnery Chief Jake Morrison spat his gum into a waste chute and cracked his knuckles. "Should we? I mean, looks like they got the message." The bridge crew chuckled. The message was currently spreading across the Zapirian fleet like a virus. Half their ships were gone. The other half were either crippled or fleeing at full burn. Blake opened a channel to the Eclipse. High Admiral Vorkis appeared on screen, his 4 bloodshot eyes wide with shock. One of his cranial ridges had been split open, leaking blue ichor down his scaled face. His voice was a rasp. You were hiding this!" Blake leaned forward. "No, we were waiting!" A pause. The weight of those words settled over the bridge like a thunderclap. Vorkis's mandibles twitched. "For what?" Hayes answered for him, her grin sharp. "For you to get cocky." The screen flickered as the dreadnought systems failed. Vorkis's final transmission cut in and out. "The Empire will burn your worlds too." Then Morrison whistled. "Well, that went way better than The Sims." Hayes snorted. "Only because you suck at Sims." Blake ignored them, turning to his comm officer. "Send the packet to Earth Command. Code, Harvest Moon." The officer nodded, fingers flying. "Done, sir." High comms already responding. Fleet movements detected at the Proxima rally point. Blake exhaled. "So it begins. Outside, the stars burned cold and indifferent. But now, hidden in the dark between them, human ships stirred. The Defiance, a lone sentinel amid floating wreckage, her hull still steaming. The shattered Eclipse of Dominion, its once gleaming armor now scorched and broken. Blake's face in shadow, his eyes reflecting the dying light of Zapirian ships. Hayes' console, covered in blinking red warning she's casually ignoring. A tactical display showing hundreds of human signatures waking up across nearby systems. "Blake, we were." Then we learned. "I hate wasting ammo." The Defiance's engines hummed to life, her thrusters glowing blue as she turned toward the jump point. Behind her, the remnants of the 7th Imperial Fleet drifted, a warning to any who might follow. Blake tapped his console, pulling up the galactic map. Dozens of new contacts pulsed along the border. Human ships, moving, Hayes stretched, popping her shoulders. So, where to next, Cap?